Alrighty. Okay, everyone. Hello, good morning. How's everyone doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. How were how'd everything go this week? Issues went well?
It
Seems like it.
eventually went well, yes.
Yeah, I saw there was a little bit of back and forth that you guys were struggling. I'm sure you can tell us a little bit about it in your demo. But yeah, hopefully it was a productive struggle. Um, yeah. Cool. Okay. I don't think there was anything up front we needed to discuss, so I'll pass it over to Ray. He's going to lead us in our demos today. Take it away.
Sure. All right. So let's start with the issue 4, if I'm not wrong. Let me see. Yeah, issue 4 first, which is Emily and Andrea.
I can do the demo um, of the feature. So, share my screen here. Um, there we go. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay. So our task was to provide a way for users to create a new list on the homepage. And so we added a form here on the homepage. I'm signed in. Um, we added a form to be able to create a new list. So you just type in, the name of the list you want to create, and um, you get a success message when if it's created successfully. You can use, and then it also auto navigates to the list page. Eventually you'll have items on your list. You can also use the enter key to create list instead of using the mouse to click on the button. One thing we did find was that, so if somebody enters the name of a list that already exists, at first it was showing that it was successfully creating the list, but actually in Firebase, it wasn't creating a new list. It just redirected you to the existing list. So we also added a check to make sure that the when people are creating a new list, they're entering a unique list name. And then one thing we also discovered is that if you use a slash in the name of the list, that also messes with Firebase. So we also added a check to not allow using the slash in the name. And then lastly, um, if there's some other error, like for example, if you're signed out of the app, then you'll get an error that just that the list cannot be created. And I think that's it for the demo. I'll pass it to Andrea to go through our code.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Oh, Lord, that's tight. Okay. All right, you guys can see. I'm just gonna move my own screen around a little bit. All right, so like Emily said, our issue for today, for this week was for the user to have the ability to create a new shopping list. And we changed about 3 files. Most of the changes are in the home.jsx file. We added a little bit to app.jsx and just a small change to Firebase and the API as well. And so the first element that we worked on was in the home view. We added the form that you saw. And so because it is React that we're working in, it needs to be a controlled form. So we have our value attribute here in the input, and it's linked to a piece of state called new list name. And then we also have an attribute called onChange that is linked to a function called handle change. So if I scroll to the top, we have our new list name, and we also have our handle change, which keeps an eye out for any changes input, and then it takes the value of that input and it sets it as the new list name. Our input does have a semantic label element around it, and it has the attribute HTML4, and our input has the attribute ID. And what this does is it links them so that when you click on the label, it automatically puts focus into the input. There actually was a small error when I was prepping for this demo and noticed that everybody kind of missed. We'd forgotten the ID attribute. So I did get that fixed, so it does work now. So it is auto-focusing on the click. And then on the form itself, when you submit, it calls a function called handle submit. Moving up to the handle submit function, first of all, it is an async function because we do have to wait for promises to be resolved in this, which I'll touch on in a little bit. But it takes in the event, and the first thing we run is the prevent default method so that the page doesn't refresh every time you submit something in the form. And we did refactor this function based on raised feedback about guard clauses versus having multiple if-else statements, which we originally did, kind of had some nested ones. And it was for ease of reading and understanding, and especially coming back to the code and seeing kind of how the logic works. So overall, there's 3 sections to this function. First is validating or checking the input. Our second part is checking if the list name already exists in the database. And our third is sort of the main meat of the function, which is to create the new list. So basically, if new list name doesn't pass the first 2 checks, then the return keywords here will stop the main function, or it'll stop the function and the main function of creating the list won't run. And in our first section where we're validating or checking the input, Davina's testing for the PR was actually super helpful in uncovering the quirk that our input can't include any forward slashes, because then the database tries to create like collections within documents and it gets a little funky. So right now, if the new list name does include a forward slash, it alerts the user and it tells them what's wrong, why, and what they can do to change the input. And then the return just stops the rest of the function from running. Our second part is the checking of the list name. So we have our current lists, which maps through the data, and it gets an array of the current names of all the documents. And then right below that, we check to see if it includes the new list name. And if it does, it alerts that the list already exists and what they can do to fix it. And again, we have a return to stop the rest of the function from running. So according to the docs, which I think it was Shane who like pointed it out, was that Firebase won't create another doc if one already exists in the collection with the same name, which is why we were kind of getting that truthy response initially. And then our last part of this was creating a new list. This is the main piece. And this is also where the promise comes in. So we have our create list function, and we are awaiting the response from the create list function, which is in the API. It takes in 3 arguments, one of which we already have thanks to the controlled form, but we also needed the user ID and the user email. So we pass that in as a prop, and then that comes from app.jsx, which already has all this information. And so we added it when we made the component. And let's go back to, here we are. And so we did choose to pass in user ID and username or user email individually as opposed to an object, since right now it's only 2 pieces of data and it isn't too complicated. With our create list, which hangs out in our Firebase API, we made a change to a try catch block to let us know whether the list creation was successful or not. So it returns true or false. That way it can send it back to our home view and we catch this response in a variable called response. So when it comes back, if the response is truthy, then yay, we alert the user that it was successful. We set the new list path, and then we navigate to the list view of the list that we just created. And the navigate comes from the use navigate hook, which we imported, and then we assigned it to a variable just to make it easier to call within our code. And so coming back down here, if the response is false or really anything else other than truthy, then it alerts the user that the list could not be created. So this includes the example that Emily gave us, where if people aren't logged in, then the database isn't going to give you a truthy response to creating lists. So that kind of covers that scenario as well. I did always, and then we had the set new list name. We just kind of cleared the form, although I know that we are immediately redirected to the list page, so maybe not as important there. I did want to mention some of the weirdness that we kind of ran into as we were working through this code. Issues kind of popped up right around when we added the use navigate hook, when we were submitting using a keyboard enter versus a mouse click. And what we found was that it would redirect us to the list page and it would create the document in the database, but it wouldn't set the list path and it wouldn't update it properly across both scenarios. So it would update with a mouse click, but it wouldn't with the keyboard enter. We weren't really sure why, so we put in a lot of console logs to check out the state of the list path. And we were checking like what was in the create list, whether the list name was maybe somehow not being passed in correctly with the keyboard. We thought it was strange that it would run like part of our function, but not all of it. So in like the troubleshooting process, we tried putting like a key down in the input, didn't make a difference. We thought maybe the set list path wasn't updating quickly enough, so we tried using it as like an async await to make it wait for that to be done. And we did find out eventually that it was not necessary, as you can see from the code. But we had settled on some extra piece of state called, it was new list success. And we were using that to track whether the list had been created successfully or not, and then using the changes in that data to trigger a use effect hook to then trigger the navigate using the list path. I think ultimately it was our multiple like if else statements that were a little nested that complicated things. Because when we refactored it, we just kind of found that we just needed to call it only within the main function, only when creating a list returns truthy. So definitely refactoring it with the guard class has made it a lot easier to read and like kind of trace the logic. And I think one more thing that didn't make it into this PR at the end was the DOM element. We had included a DOM element below the form to show the user whether the list creation was successful or not, like the status. And as we were testing, we realized that with the page direct, it just moved too fast for the user to be able to actually see the status. So that's why we have changed everything to alerts for now. And I know that we've kind of discussed the possibility of polishing the design later on and refactoring with like a custom alert component or like a React package for notifications, but that's like further down on our to-do list. So yeah, are there any questions?
Cool. I just want to say thank you for explaining everything. I see the struggle at the beginning. Maybe after I see the PR and then like a lot happening in there, so I give some feedback. But yeah, I think you guys did a great job, especially when trying to figure out the guard clause. Maybe I will miss the include slash when I building this one, so it's a good catch.
Mhm.
And yeah, overall it's good. And then maybe I don't have any question. Kathleen, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't know if I have any questions either, but first of all, that was a great demo from both of you. I like that you kind of focused on the challenges. It can be kind of scary when you're demoing. You just want it to seem like everything was easy and it was perfect, but it really shows your deeper understanding of the process when you focus on like this is the stuff that went wrong and this is how we fixed it. I also really like seeing how much testing went into this, and it really shows you like testing is a really important part of development because that's how you caught all of these different edge cases and everything. And like also, Andrea, good catch with the like ID, missing ID, because that's also like that's important. But it's, sometimes there's just like if there's a lot going on, you don't always notice everything. And thorough testing is the way to catch that kind of stuff. So, yeah, wonderful job. Do any of the other collabs have any questions about this PR? It sounds like you all were like really giving good feedback too on the PR, so that's great.
I just want to say, catching a lot of those edge cases, just really good job. I think as I start demoing our section, our next thing, we probably have a couple things that we could add because we might run into some of the same things through that testing, kind of throw through the same loops.
Yeah, sometimes I find that like until you're really sitting down and having a chance to like not look at the code side of it and just focusing on like what's deployed, I was like, wait, I thought we added a like label specifically so we could do this. Like, why isn't it working? And then I had to go back and yeah, all these like little pieces that end up coming together.
Andrea, could you scroll a little bit down to the HTML part?
Yep.
This is something I might be wrong or not, but I think the input should be outside the label. Maybe you can test it later. It's just like
Okay.
job.
I think you can do it either way, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah,
yeah,
also
we can check
I'm
the
not sure.
docs.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not necessary. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. Thanks for demoing everything. Give
Okay.
applause for Andrea and Emily. Next one, Xian and Devina. The floor is yours.
Sweet. All right, I will do the demo. Let's see here. Can everybody see this all right?
Yep.
Sweet. Here, let me move video over here and then this over here. All right, so here is the deployed app. I'm going to sign out and sign back in real quick. So our main goal for this week was to, on this manage list page, allow a user to, while logged in, add an item and then a specific purchase window to that item within that list in the database. So most of the items that I tested this week with Davina were cheese related, of course, because that's just where I'm at in life right now. So user can type something like cheddar and say that they need to buy it soon, kind of soon, or not soon. Something that we did discuss was that we might want to put explicit dates on these labels just so user knows, this is 7 days, 14 days, or 30 days. So I'm going to say I need cheddar soon, add item, and then we have an alert. Let's see here, unable to add item, next purchase soon. Okay, so that's an error. Let's see.
I think it's because you didn't select dinner as your list that you wanted to add the item to.
Thank you very much. So back on the home screen, hitting dinner first. I'm gonna check to make sure my list is populated by going to list itself. These are all cheese names. If it's a weird name, it's probably cheese. I'll give you that warning. And then now I would like to add cheddar. I still need it soon. Add the item. And then item is successfully added. An alert pops up to the user. Something we don't have is like immediate navigation to that list. That might be something we want to do in the future. Also, there was a conversation for within office hours, I believe, about making the form itself for our component for manage a list its own sort of component, but that might be something to add to the repo in the future as an issue. But yeah, that's about the walkthrough for that new feature.
Okay, cool. So I will be demoing our code. Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So going over here, move this out of my way. Okay, so we changed, I think, 3 files. I'm gonna start with the user interface side of things. So what we did here, of course, we imported add item from the API and then use state here. So our setup is a lot similar. It's very similar to what Emily and Andrea had. We have our form component down here, which is what is being returned. We also used the semantic label with the HTML4 attached to an ID. So we have that for both of our inputs here. And then something that Shane was mentioning that we discussed was something that we could potentially implement later on, was pulling this out to create like a separate component. So we just render the component and not all of this code within the managed list view. But again, that's something that is something that we could implement later on. It doesn't necessarily break anything for now since it is like a small project. So we are taking list path here. We're pulling that from the, I believe, app component. Yeah, so we took the list path from here because that is set up here already in the app component. So we use that as a prop. And then when a user like fills out the form and hits submit, we trigger the handle submit function. We didn't run into quite as many issues as Andrea and Emily. Ours, especially because we didn't have to navigate at this part in our project. But so this is calling the event, and then we also use the event .prevent default to prevent it from reloading the page. This was just because initially we were struggling with having this. We also used, controlled state. So we have this initial form state object, and then this updates that object when the user makes a change. So that is a controlled component there, where on change, the handle change function is called, and it just updates this object here. And so in our handle submit function again, we use try and catch to kind of alert the user whether or not their item was successfully added. So we used async and await to like try the add item that we pulled from the API. We used the parameter with the list path, excuse me, and then the new item to add it to that that list. If it was successful, item successfully added. And then if it didn't go through, if there was an error, we just console log the error for now so we could get more information on what the error was, and then to the user, unable to add item. And one thing that we did struggle with was that like we were able to get the item to be added pretty quickly. Like we didn't struggle with that too much, but we did notice that when we were adding an item, the item that was being added was like a long string of characters. We were like, what is this string of characters? We're trying to add cheddar. So we were like doing some troubleshooting, kind of like trying to figure out here, we were trying to figure out where exactly, like I figured it was probably an ID of some sort, but we were trying to figure out exactly like where that was coming from. And then after a while, we realized that this was calling item.id instead of item.name. So it was quite literally adding the item's ID to our list and displaying that to the user instead of the name. So we caught that. And then I think Lewis asked us to change this to be the item ID instead of the index to have like a better system for keys to manage that list. So Shane implemented that. And then in our Firebase folder, the only thing we updated was in this add item function. This here was like a console log. So we just changed this to await add doc. For us, because we were trying to figure out that we were trying to figure out where that item ID, why that was like populating instead of the name. We were trying to console log this object. So we did create a variable to hold that, and we just left it like that for now in case we needed to troubleshoot in the future. But that was really all that we added to this file. And I think that is it. I don't think Shane demoed this, but because we do have this like label here, it is accessible, so you can submit using the enter key, and then it also like clicking on the label will also put focus into that input field.
Nice. Give applause first, I guess. And yeah, thank you for the detailed explanation from the code. I also read the PR a little bit, and then whatever you explain, everything is like round through everything, so it's really helpful. And yeah, maybe my quick question: what is the most difficult part solving this issue?
The most difficult part in solving this issue?
Yeah.
I mean, it was really just trying to figure out, we spent a good amount of time trying to figure out like why it was calling that ID, because we were able to get it to add the item pretty quickly, but it was like a 16 character item name instead of like what we were inputting. So we were trying to figure out what was happening there. Actually, I'll kind of show you what we were thinking too, because reading it's of course no longer here.
In the cloud. Oh,
Yeah, so like in the issue.
You can go where it says 5 closed
Yeah.
above the list, above number 14. You can click there. Yeah.
Okay. In the description of the issue, it was saying that like when this feature is implemented correctly, new items will automatically show up in the list view because Streamlist gets the new data. So we were thinking like maybe the way the Streamlist item function is calling the add item function is maybe why that's getting put in that way. We searched every single file and couldn't find this. So we didn't know what that was. We checked Firebase. So when that didn't work, we kind of had to work backwards, and then that's when we kind of realized, okay, so what does our list component look like then? Because that's where this is actually being rendered, and that's when we realized that it's at item.id instead of item.name. But yeah, I think, Shane, do you think there's anything else that we had much issue with?
I would say with that specific like troubleshooting sequence that we went through, I remember one of the biggest aspects that we ran into was within the Firebase data, what do you call it? Database? The database. The shape of the object was like, it's like for the past couple of weeks, the shape of the object has been like a critical sort of like sharp point in the troubleshooting, only because I think we were displaying the milk and eggs as it's like the shape of those items is distinctly different than anything we've been adding, because what we've been adding are actual objects with all of these new arguments, with all these different like date, next purchase and date created and stuff like that. So once we realized that these new items might look different in our Firebase like back end, that's when we actually started being able to like poke at them the right way, from what I remember.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I remember when we start add some item in there, we just put the name and then we don't have any ID and then like other attributes. But our Firebase function like creating other attributes now. So that's why, yeah, I got it. Cool. Yeah, any other question from others and Caitlin?
Great job. I like that you all are making note of possible future enhancements you might want to make. Feel free if there's like something that is outside the scope of your issue that you think you want to do, you can always create a new issue in that list to tackle down the road. Even if you don't have time to finish it during this 10 weeks, this project is going to be yours as a group. If you want to continue working on it, that's totally an option. So if you want to start making note of things you want to do in the future, that's great to keep doing.
Cool. Any other question from Emily and Andrea? Okay, let's get last applause for Xian and Devina. And I will pass to Kathleen for the retro.
Yeah, so like I mentioned on Slack, we're going to be doing a retrospective today, which we talked about a little bit when we were talking about Agile, but it's an important part of an Agile workflow is just taking some time to reflect on what's been working, what hasn't been working, how can we improve moving forward. So I will go ahead and share the link if you don't have it handy, but we're going to just take some time here to fill this out. And let me share my screen so you can see how to do this. So if you're looking at this board, we have a few different columns. We'll fill some of these in. You can just come down here to add item and just type in, whatever you want to say. And we'll give ourselves about like I'll say 5 minutes to fill this in, and then we'll come back together to read through them. Try and put something in each column. The action items column will fill in together as a group based on what we have here, if there are any action items. But if you can try and think of at least one thing to put in each column, I will start think I can start a timer. Feel free to turn off your camera if you don't want to just like be typing. Ray, if you also maybe want to pause the recording,
Sure.
and we'll resume once we come back together.
Okay, sounds good.
The recording.
Yep. Cool.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll just go down the line. I'll ask you all to read what you said just to, in case we need to expand on anything. I think this first one was Shane. Shane, do you want to read your first comment? Under appreciations?
Absolutely. Yeah, just a shout out to Emily and Devina for the practice. I've gotten pairing. I shouldn't just read it straight up. But yeah, just I really appreciate seeing how talented people are looking at things from like different perspectives than me. Something that I've noticed is in making forms or things like that, I might have like missed a few like details along the way of like good semantic HTML. So just seeing how you all build things in general helps me sort of like shore up those little gaps in my knowledge big time. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it, put it that way.
Yeah, great. Love to hear it. This one is Davina.
Yeah, so I just really like to appreciate how well Andrea and Emily like tested their issue. It was a great reminder to me that I should also be considering like the user experience and like how many like edge cases the user is going to find and like testing that before pushing out the code. So I really appreciate like how well they like dove deep into testing those edge cases.
Yeah, wonderful. Next, oh, that's me. I just said that I really appreciate the supportive attitude and proactiveness. I think like I keep commenting, you all are like very on time to these calls, and just like I think very communicative and asking questions when you need to, but also, working on your own very self-sufficiently. So love to see it. This one is Ray.
Yeah, I want to shout out to everyone for doing great demoing all the issues. And then especially running through all the code and thought process. It's kind of like difficult, but you are doing great, actually.
Nice. Next is Emily.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to Shane and Andrea for troubleshooting the issues and, patiently, working through them over the past couple of weeks, especially in my first real experience pair programming. So it's been a really good experience and very helpful to also Shane was saying to get other sort of bits of information that I didn't know from other people and just bounce ideas off each other. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, great. And last is Andrea.
Similarly, big thank yous to Davina and Emily for my first real pair programming experiences and getting to actually work through things as a team rather than being all on my own. It's been really eye-opening to have just a second brain. They're offering suggestions from their point of view, and I wanted to shout out to the mentors too for their suggestions. That's been really helpful in the PRs to then reflect on our code and see how we can maybe streamline things or make things just more readable. And so see you next week, Shane.
Love it. Yeah, I'm so glad you all have been working so well together the past couple weeks. Now we're going to go into what went well, which is, there's a lot of overlap between appreciations and what went well, but there are a couple of other insights we can get. So I just want to take a second to shout you all out for the tough issue in week 1 with being the first cohort to do this new Firebase login thing. And I appreciated that other people were also jumping in to help and it was tough and you all didn't get discouraged and you did it and it was very impressive. So kudos to all of you. Let's see, this is Shane.
Yeah, sorry, I was stuck on mute. Just really enjoying how enthusiastic everybody is for the experience itself, and while problem solving, how we all have been keeping in mind just look at the documentation, lean back on our resources that we've been given for these issues, follow the links and read through them, stuff like that. I just appreciate that people are doing that. That really helps, I think.
Yeah, for sure. That it seems so obvious, but it's not. So that really is noteworthy. Okay, Andrea.
Similar to some of my appreciation, the PR process I think has been really I think it's been really great to see our code again from a different set of eyes, and then other people doing their own testing for things that we might have overlooked. And I think that's been really successful in terms of being able to commit the best code that we can.
Yeah, I will second that. I appreciate that you all are going in, giving thorough reviews, commenting on things when you notice things, because sometimes during this first retro, that is feedback we need to give Collabs. Make sure you're commenting on each other's PRs, and that is something you all have been doing without needing additional prompting. So that's great. Okay, let's see. The next one is Emily.
Yes, I think we've been doing great at, having patience and perseverance, getting through issues. I know, with both of my weeks, there were a couple points where I feel like we're kind of totally stumped as to what was going on. But we just kept, working on it. And I know, and with Andrea, for example, we even took a break one day and came back to it later in the day and figured out something that would work, that would actually work. So I think that having just perseverance and continuing to try things has been going well.
I would agree. I think you've been doing a great job of that. Let's see. Next is Davina.
Yeah, I think that our the project's been going so well just because of everyone's collaborative spirit. I've been also this week working on a hackathon, and so it's kind of giving me a different perspective of collaboration, and everyone in the Collab Lab is so patient, and really open to listening. I think listening is probably like the biggest factor of strong communication. It's like, everyone here is willing to learn from each other, and I think that's great. And I think that's why we've been so successful with pair programming, is that willingness to listen and learn from each other. So yeah, I think it's been going really well.
Yeah, I love that insight. Um, Great. Let's see. Next is Andrea.
Sorry, I think I put like 3 things in this column and I
No, that's
probably could have
great.
stuffed them all into
No.
one. Um, I think the demos have been fantastic. It's been great practice to work on the technical communication side of programming, which I think doesn't happen too often when we're like in the learning process. But B, it's also been great to see how other people are communicating things and like what kind of details that they've been going into. Like I think back on like Shane's demo from week 1 and how he walked us through um, the the debugging process, and I thought that was an awesome thing to add to like my own piece, being able to talk through like the issues that we ran into. So um, yeah, demos are nerve-wracking, but I think they're skill building.
I would agree. They are scary, but they get less scary with practice. And you all have been doing a great job so far. Ray?
Yep, the pull request and review process went well. It was a great communication through the PR description and also comments.
Love it. And then this one is Andrea.
Yep. And I think paragraph programming has also been a success so far. Everyone's really embodying that collaborative spirit. And I think it's not just like the people who are pair programming, I guess, necessarily, but the people who are also doing the PR reviews. So yay for collaboration.
Yay! I love it. Wonderful. Okay, we've got a couple things here in the what could be improved column. I think this one is Shane.
Yeah, so I can only really speak for myself, but getting used to the pace of sort of working on the issues early in the week, and then if problems do come up or blockers come up, figuring out the next time to work on things or to work on things asynchronously. I think that I haven't had a really clear distinction of how I was going to do it with my personal stuff. So just getting that a little bit more fine-tuned, I guess, over the next few weeks will be something to improve upon for me.
Yeah, that's valid. I think it's hard to know what you're getting into until you're doing it, but now you all have seen kind of how the weeks go and hopefully can kind of figure out how to best like fit your life around or fit Collab Lab around your life so that you can get the work done. Great. This one's a question from me. I was just wondering about Slack communication and how that's going. I know there's like sometimes a lot of messages in the Slack channel. Is that kind of overwhelming to you all? How are we feeling about Slack in general?
I've been liking Slack so far. I don't feel like it's been overwhelming. I think I'm more likely to check Slack than to like check other places. So like getting like a ping like, hey, can you review my pull request in Slack is gonna like be more prevalent to me at least. So I personally like Slack. I don't think we've, been overwhelmingly putting stuff in there, but
Okay,
that's my
good.
yeah.
Does anyone agree or have another opinion?
I've been pretty solid with it personally, but I was curious if there's do we all have an expectation of how quickly we want communication to be happening with some of these things? Is there like I guess if something's like urgent or something like that, should we just work on it on our own for the problem solving process? Stuff like that comes up, I guess, in my brain where
Yeah,
sometimes I can put in 2 hours that evening, but I'll have to catch somebody back up on like where I went on that
right.
sort of a thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's a really good question about our expectations of responses. And I think like as a team, maybe we can have an expectation of like in a day, like within a day you can respond, but maybe with your partner, it's good to kind of set that up front when you're pairing of just like, this is what my life is like, and this is how quickly I can respond. How do we want to handle those um, points of friction if we can't communicate well together? So I think, does that sound realistic to you all? Like if you send a message, you expect a response within a day generally. of your teammates, like 24 hours. Okay, cool. So maybe we can set that as our team norm, but then on a, pair by pair basis, you can set those expectations of more urgent communication. Cool. Okay. Let's see. There's two more. So we have one from Andrea.
Yeah, so I was kind of just wondering in terms of the PR and having those issues and the comments come up for maybe things that we want to tweak, how just like knowing how to tackle it. Does the pair just like split it up as we go? Do you take them as they come? Are we trying to set up more pairing time together to tackle things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it feels very similar to Shane's. So this definitely seems like a question that people are wondering about. Um, I would say that I would also probably encourage you all to like talk to your partner just about what are your expectations. I think that it's totally fine if it's like remove a comment here. I think I'm of the opinion you can probably do that without consulting with your partner, like, oh yeah, we forgot to take a comment out. Um, and it's fine if you want to just, chat with your partner and say, hey, I have some time to work on this. Maybe I'll like put up I'll make a change and you can take a look at it when you have time. Or hey, I have time to pair. Do you have availability? I think it's like whatever works for you all, but it's totally fine after you've got your PR up. If you don't have time to pair together, you all can kind of coordinate that between yourselves. Does that answer your question?
That does. I just wasn't totally sure, I guess, about like the TCL kind of approach towards like that async
Mhm.
portion after we've got the PR in. So that really does
Yeah.
help. Yeah.
If it's going to be like a really involved thing, I would try to find time to pair with your partner just so that one person isn't doing like a bunch of refactoring that the other person doesn't really grasp. But if it's like smaller pieces of feedback and just like let them know, like, hey, I have some time, I'm going to work on this if that's okay, and they can review it. Um, yeah, I will say it depends on the scale of the work that needs to be done, but generally async is okay. Okay, I'm eating into raise time for issues. So this is our last one. And oh yeah, Davina, okay, please expand on this.
Yeah, I think just like on a personal level, like I do sometimes like see that a pull request has gone in and I'm like, okay, I'll review that and then I like forget about it. Just being more on top of like getting that to that right away so that if there are any things that I come up on, like giving the other team time to work and correct those issues. So being more prompt and also maybe just like diving a little bit deeper on like reviewing, like, Andrea caught that thing with the ID after everyone had reviewed and approved it. So things like that. Just paying more
Yeah.
attention to details.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's good to think of reviewing PR as part of your work for the week and like as something that you want to try and front load, as soon as you can. Yeah, that's great. I think you all have been doing a great job of reviewing, but yeah, we want to give ourselves as much time as we can. Okay, and there's one action item here from Ray oh no, from Davina. Sorry, I assumed it was Ray for some reason. Yeah, go ahead, Davina.
Oh, I think both the other team and our team, when we were creating the alerts for letting the user know whether or not the adding, like creating a list or adding the item would succeed or fail, they experienced like, I think Andrea and Emily had talked about doing like a DOM element because like that structure is a little bit like easier for the user than having to like clear away a notification. But then on their side, because they're navigating a way that didn't really work. I also talked with Shane about this when we were working together, and we kind of also thought the same thing, but did the alert for simplicity and just to like streamline across both issues. But Lewis suggested in the future that we could use Toastify to kind of create that alert in such a way that it would still populate after the user had been navigated to the list, but do it in a way that the user doesn't have to like click on anything to make it go away.
Yeah, for sure. Toastify is a great library to use. So that's definitely something we can add an issue for in the future if it doesn't come up with some of the design work. But okay, sorry to like rush the end of retros, but I want to make sure we have time for Ray to get through our issues for the week. But we can definitely continue talking on Slack about if there's anything we want to continue to improve. But great job, everyone. I appreciate all the feedback in retro. Okay, Ray, go ahead.
Cool, thanks. So yeah, we are going for the week 3. The team will be Andre and Shane will be doing the issue 6, and then Devina and Emily will be doing the issue 7. So I'm going to the 6 first. Okay, so the main idea, I want to be able to invite others to an existing shopping list. I believe the main idea, we just need to add a list to be available with other people. So we want to allow user invite others to existing shopping lists. They can manage them with friends or family. And user enters an existing user's email into a form. And the share list function in Firebase file is called with the appropriate inputs. And let's see, so there is some acceptance criteria. The manage list view shows a form that allows user to enter an email to invite the existing user to a list. And then in addition to the form that allows them to add the item to that list as well. And inputs also accept the email has a semantic label. And same like before, I believe. So using click or enter to input the email. And also this is the guard clause. If user already exists, we can insert the user. If not, we need to show an error message. And yeah, there is some notes in here. And then maybe one thing that you need to check about the share list function, trying to understand what looks like in this function, especially in the Firebase file. And yep, for this another one. So this is about filtering. So I want to filter my shopping list to make it easier to locate an item in the list. Yeah, the acceptance criteria of form is added at top the list view, which is in the list view you need to add a filter. And then the form includes a text field, and with narrows down the list the user. I believe it's just like input, and then maybe when you're typing it will be like filtering the list. And then yeah, when there is a text in the field, some kind of button to clear the field. When the field is clear, the list is reset to unfiltered state. So there is a little button, and then if you click clear, it will be like reset the filter. Let's see the notes. You will know your label is correctly implemented if you click on the label and keyboard focus moves to related input. I believe some of them already implement this one, so it should be fine. And then the filter text should match any part of the item name. Example, it should not only match from the starting of the string. So like any related in the string. And yep, do you guys any have question before we end this meeting? Cool. Kathleen, do you want to add something?
No, I know that was really quick, team. So feel free once you've had a chance to digest. That's on me because retro ran long. If you have had a chance to look through and have any questions, feel free to reach out to us as always. But yeah, one note is that next week we will be discussing learning modules, the accessibility learning module from this week, as well as the learning modules for this upcoming week. So we'll be discussing 2 topics at the next sync. Yeah. All right, everyone.
Right.
Happy Sunday. Talk to you later. Good luck.
All right. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.